knew he had to serve. After being stationed in Fort Dix, Fort McClellan, and Camp Shelby, he went into the European theater through London and was a part of campaigns throughout Europe. For having taken out machine guns next, he later received a Bronze Star.
Which, for everybody's knowledge, a Bronze Star is a decoration for bravery.
Right, which we'll show you in other images a little bit later. He did not know how to respond, but kept asking himself, how could one person have done this to so many? He knows that being in the military changed his life. Over the decades, his buddies in the service became some of his closest friends. In the service, Carl learned the value of kindness. As a volunteer at local schools, he has spoken about the importance of kindness in World War II with over 15,000 young people and counting, including all of you beautiful people. Carl is the recipient of the Bronze Star, French Legion of Honor, Combat Infantry Badge, European Medal with 2 battle stars, Occupational Medal, Good Conduct Medal, European Theater Battle Medal with 2 stars, Victory Medal, World War II, CBI, an American Campaign Medal, amongst other honors. He was also awarded the key to the city of West Palm Beach by the mayor and other honors. And so I'm going to turn it over to my dad. Yeah, we're going to get to that, I think. Oh, he wants me to show you the medals now. So here's a picture. But we'll talk about that probably a little bit later. There's the French Legion of Honor, and that's the Bronze Star. And this is the European Medal with 2 stars.
Combat Infantry Badge.
And the Combat Infantry Badge. I know it's hard to see with the glare, but I'll try to so you guys kind of get an idea. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to my dad, Carl Arfa, and thank you all for your time.
Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank you, David Trail, and each and every one of you who are here today. My teachers are the best. You are the unsung heroes of our communities. Your role in our society is of critical importance, and so often you go unappreciated, unfunded, and undervalued. I was lucky to have a handful of incredible teachers in my life, so I know full well how one instructor, one leader, one mentor, one person can change another person's life forever. So thank you, David Trail, and all your associates. And thank you, Mrs. Evans, and thank you, Miss Nelson, my first and second grade teacher, who I lived with when my mom got sick. I have to tell you that because teachers have been part of my life for my entire life. My name is Carl Arfa, A-R-F-A, and at this time, I'm 96 years young. I'm a veteran of World War II, where I was a bazooka gunner in the 69th Infantry Anti-Tank Company, and I entered into combat during the Battle of the Bulge, which started in December of 1944 and ended January 1945 for that one battle. We continued the war after that.
Hey, Carl, could you, like yesterday, briefly explain what a bazooka is for those people who aren't familiar with it?
Yes, I will. I got to send my daughter out to somebody grinding the chase him out of here. Somebody cutting the trees or something, or blowing bushes. Okay, he's gone. A bazooka is a 3.5-inch barrel this big around that shoots shoots a shell for long distances with much power. And the power is enough to take down an entire steeple, an entire church, or blow up 2 cars. It's a very powerful gun. The most powerful hand-carried weapon in the United States Army. uh, I entered into battle during the Battle of the Bulge, which I'd like everybody to know about, and I will tell you more about it soon. It took place in France, Belgium, and eventually into Germany. I was awarded the Bronze Star, the European medal, and some other medals, which you saw. As a soldier fighting in war, it was our belief that we had to protect the American way of life. We live in the greatest and strongest country in the world, not because of our guns or our planes or our bullets, because of our virtues, the people who defend us, and those who teach us how to live by our ideals and laws. In World War II, our military gave us the freedom that we needed to live in peace and harmony. Today, not only is it our troops who perform this function, but it is the responsibility of each and every one of us. I feel compelled to begin by quickly saying something about the recent developments at the United States Capitol on January the 6th, 2021. Also in Parkland, Pittsburgh, Charlottesville, Thousand Oaks, and other recent horrific events that occurred in the United States. Excuse me a minute. I feel passionate about fighting the influx of fascism, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, neo-Nazism, anti-black, anti-gay, anti-Asian, anti-brown, and all the other anti-militia-oriented people who support these anti-American ideologies. My friends, my children, my sweethearts, because I see a few girls that I really like here, probably all of them. I was a handsome guy in my early days and I would have had a date with one of you guys. My daughter's getting a picture of me. Here I was. Anybody want a date with this guy? It's a good dance tonight. Anyhow, let's continue.
Carl, one person said, okay.
Oh, I'm ready, because
Emily's not nearby, but Maya over here is.
oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm 96, you're 17. That's a perfect duo. Anyhow, I believe today we are fighting in a civil war in the United States. Not with guns, but with hatred, lies, and uncontrolled social media, preying on folks that don't take the time to educate themselves into what is reality. My friends, have the lessons of World War II been forgotten? How do we allow this evil to continue instead of eradicating it? What are we going to do about this evil hatred and other forms of racism that exists in our world? Well, it starts with parents at home and with teachers. It starts at schools. It starts with educating young people across America about something you're born with, something evil that you're not born with. These are bad traits that we learn from others. We all want the same thing, to be respected. My friend Father Patrick O'Neill once made a profound statement that we are not separate families, but we are one family, God's family. It is my belief that regardless of who you are or what religion you are, we are all one group. Now more than ever, we need to teach tolerance, communication without hostility, and heed the lessons of the 1930s and 40s, what was my era when I was in school. History can repeat itself, but it's up to us to change that course and make a future a better place for our children and grandchildren to live in. I vividly recall being wounded during the Battle of the Bulge. I was being treated by a Catholic medic, being literally carried behind the lines by an African-American sergeant, and being treated by a Jewish doctor, all within 1 hour. The question is, who do I owe my life to? At the end of the day, we need each other. We need each other. We need to love each other, take care of each other. Before I go any further, my dear friends, this was written by an unknown GI, and I'd like to repeat it to you. Try to remember one of these things. It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the politicians, that ensure our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, serves beneath the flag, and most importantly, whose coffin is under the flag. As soldiers, we sacrificed, not because we had to. As soldiers, we bled, not because we wanted to. And as soldiers, we fought because we needed to. And as soldiers, we died because we loved this country. A quote from Edmund Burke, that all that is needed for evil to succeed is for people, decent people, to do nothing. Because the promise of America is guaranteed and protected by our servicemen and women, who without their hard work, commitment, and dedication, we would not live in the greatest country in the world today. Anyhow, I jumped ahead a little bit. I need to start at the beginning of my military career. On December the 7th, 1941, I hope you can remember that date, I asked my father if I could sign up with the military as I was 17 years old. I could have gone in the Navy or the Marines. Pearl Harbor was being attacked, and we were listening to the bombing on a small Philco radio. And my dad, who was an immigrant from Russia and who loved this country, said to me, "You can sign up when you finish high school," which was still a year and a half later. I graduated on the courthouse steps in Monticello, New York, at the end of June 1943. I threw my cap in the air, kissed my mom and dad, got on the waiting bus, and came home 3 years later. I was sent to 3 training camps: Fort Dixon, New Jersey, Fort McClellan, Alabama, and finally Camp Shelby, Mississippi. I wound up in the Fighting 69th Infantry Division as a bazooka gunner, and we were then put through a very intense training because our commanding general had lost a division at a war effort in an area called El Alamein in Africa. And he was determined this time to have a very efficient fighting division for future combat. General Bolte was his name, and his 69th Infantry Division was called the 3Bs, Bolte's Bivouacking Bastards, and were recognized as a top fighting division. We were in camp only 3 days a month. The rest of the month, we were out in the field under heavy training commitments. The schedule was very extreme and produced a strong fighting group. And then after some months of training, we were put on a transport ship called the John Erickson, which was originally a deluxe cruise ship that held 600 people. And this time there were 5,000 aboard. We were sleeping 5 high. I was lucky I got a bunk on the top. We sailed to Southampton, England. We were then transported to a village called Aylesbury, where we proceeded to have additional training. Now I want to digress a little bit, because war isn't all that bad. There is a few moments of happiness. Across from our billets, which was Longwood Castle, was a pub owned by a Mr. and Mrs. Sweeney. A pub is a bar. And after work, we went to the pub, and I met their daughter, whose name was Molly, and we fell in love. But I fell in love very easily because I loved to be in love. One day, Molly asked me if I would like to eat a steak, which I had not seen in 2 years. I said, of course. But the restaurant was in London, and I asked Mr. Sweeney if he would allow me to take Molly to the restaurant on the train, which was an hour away. And he said, yes. And behave yourself, Yank. I said, yes, sir, I certainly will. Anyhow, we ordered the steak, and after finishing, the biggest steak I ever saw, it was this big, the bombs started falling on London. And Molly said to me, let's run to the underground. The underground is the subway station. It's called the underground in England. Molly said to me while we were sitting holding hands, how did you enjoy the steak? I said, it was wonderful. She said to me, you just ate a horse. I've never eaten a horse. I almost threw up. And I almost died from the horse, but I survived it. And after the bombing stopped, the bombs were raining down on London while we were sitting in the underground. And after the bombing stopped, we went out and I saw London on fire. On fire, the most horrible experience that I ever had. People lying in the streets. And the first time I had ever seen wounded and dead human beings. It was my first experience with death. The most horrible experience. I shall never forget it. I'm now 96 and I still remember it like it was this morning. Anyhow, we stayed in Aylesbury for another few months in training, and after a wonderful Christmas party where Molly and I danced the evening away, we were fortunate to be able to enjoy our lives for a short period of time that we had together. In early January 1945, we shipped out on LST, landing ship tank carriers, across the English Channel to Rouen, France, where we were immediately directed to battle because the Battle of the Bulge was the largest battle of World War II, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. 600,000 Americans, 31 divisions were committed to this battle. 60,000 British, French, Canadians, and Belgians added to the total commitment. My friends, 81,000 Americans were wounded. 19,000 were killed in battle. 4 of my very dear friends were killed in that battle. 500,000 Germans were committed, and 100,000 Germans were wounded or killed. Thus, the fighting continued for 4 or 5 weeks in bitter cold and snow. And all the Germans could accomplish was to put a small bulge in the line, but the line held firm. The Germans suffered a terrible loss of men, tanks, and planes. And those people who fought the Battle of the Bulge will never forget it. I clearly remember the horrible conditions such as snow, sleet, and freezing rain. I clearly remember being hungry and cold. We hadn't eaten in 4 or 5 days. But I had a D-bar, which was a chocolate bar that you could only nibble on because it was hard as a rock. We were then told to leave our foxholes and take an area on the immediate front lines. One of my friends, my very closest friend, Gally King, whose grandfather owned the largest ranch in Texas, King Reg asked if I was hungry. I said, of course I'm hungry. And he said, I know where there is some food. So he snuck out of his foxhole. I heard brrr. He shot a cow. He cut off the front leg, and I cooked it in my steel helmet over a half a pound of TNT, which fed 18 or 19 guys. I believe that cow was made by Goodyear rubber, but it was something to eat. The German purpose for this battle was that General von Rundstedt needed to capture the port of entry of Antwerp, Belgium, so that they would have a supply entry into Northern Europe. But finally, who saved our lives? General Patton's Third Army came up from the south and rescued us. Now we went over from France to Belgium. We were now on the border of the German Reich. I want to tell you a story. You have a minute, I hope?
Sure.
Then I want to tell you a story. We captured a little farm town that had 10, 12 houses. Every house had a barn attached to it. And I hadn't been able to get a shower or clean up in about 6 weeks. So I was in the house warming up hot water with an old lady cooking it for me on a wood stove. And I was stripped down with no shirt, and I was going to take a small little bath when this little old 80-year-old lady or 90-year-old lady, I don't remember, said to my lieutenant, Herr Leutnant, ich möchte gerne zu Milchen de Kuh, warum die Kinder müssen the Milch haben. What she said to him in English, that was in German. I need to go out and milk the cow because our children need the milk, and that's the only cow we have left in this village. So he didn't answer her. So I said to Gally, why don't the son of a gun, well, that ain't the exact word I used, but it's good enough. I said, why don't the son of a gun let her go out and milk the cow? And Gally said to me, Sarge, how do you know what she wanted? I said, I don't know how I know, but I think that's what she wanted. So he said, Lieutenant Gershader, Carl thinks he knows what the lady wanted. And Lieutenant Gershader said to me, who was 6 foot 2.5, 200 pounds of solid muscle, and he said to me, what does she want? I said, I think she wants to go out and milk the cow. So he said, well, then you take her. A little 5 foot tall little lady, I cocked a machine gun, and I walked her out into the barn, and she milked the cow. And she brought the milk in for the children, which made us all very happy because the children were very hungry. And they had the milk, the hot milk to drink. What I found out was that the German language is very similar to the Yiddish language, in which I was fluent. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I was fluent in everyday German. And I became the company interpreter because Captain Datnoff didn't understand a word either. So now I became like a big shot in my company because I could speak fluent German within 3 weeks. That's the story of my life about speaking German. We were now committed to full combat, and we took the city of Weissen, where we captured 40 Nazis that we turned over to the MPs. We hadn't slept in 48 hours and were exhausted, but we continued on and captured a castle in the city of Blankenheim called Ehrenbreitstein. And after a major battle, we eventually were successful. The Fighting 69th was a division comprised of many ethnicities. Many ethnicities. We all bled the same red blood. No matter how we looked on the outside, we bled the same red blood. If we were wounded, we could have died. And then we continued on the best we were able. Thus, we fought across Germany, crossing the Rhine River, until we reached the Elbe River in the city of Torgau, where we met the Russians coming from the east and had a 3-day meeting with the Russian troops. My general, Reinhardt, was not happy about this meeting due to his hatred of the Russian lifestyle and the Russian government. Then my division captured the city of Leipzig after a hard battle. My company was assigned to taking of the Napoleonic Monument, which was very difficult as there were 2,000 SS troops involved. Finally, my captain sent the flamethrowers and we burned them out. I'm going to show you a picture of this castle, of this monument. Deborah, how do you show this?
Just a little bit higher. There you go.
Is that the right way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
That's the monument, and there was a flag flying from that monument. I said to my friends, that monument, that flag, I need to take home to my dad. And while they were shooting, I was climbing a flagpole to get that flag. And here is a picture of it. And my friend, 30 of my friends signed the flag. And I have their names and addresses on another sheet, which is not important at this moment. Now, after the hostilities ceased in Leipzig, Germany, and because I spoke passable German, Captain Datnoff, my commanding officer, and my dear friend said to me, take your platoon, Arfa, and find some trouble. I was good at finding trouble. So after walking for 5 kilometers or 6, we came across a barbed wire fence. It was a prison camp with the gates were open. And a sign above the fence said, Arbeit macht frei, work will make you free. There were 80 or 90 people behind this fence. And one of the kids, about 15 or 16 years old, started to walk out. And I said to him in German, stop. He kept on walking. I cocked my machine gun. And I said, one more time, stop or I'll shoot. So he stopped. And I said to him, Wie heißen Sie? What's your name? And he said, my name is Maya. I never forgot it because my father's name was Maya. Now, 70 years later, I radioed my captain. I said, sir, I got 80, 90 people that are starving to death, that have no blankets, have no clothes. I don't know what to do with them. He said to me, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And he drove up with the whole company. And our cooks made them food, and they gave them blankets, and they gave them other things of value, and they rescued them. My platoon had to leave because we were the spearhead of the First Army. My company was the spearhead of the spearhead. So I stayed maybe an hour, and then I had to leave with my platoon. Now, 75 years later, I'm giving a lecture to 1,500 people. My daughter and my wife were with me. And I'm telling the story about Maya and the concentration camp that I found. And a man jumps up and said, that's me. That was me. And he comes up, kisses my fingers. The reporter for the Miami Herald took a picture of it. It's on the front page of the Miami Herald. My daughter has the picture. That's Maya kissing my fingers. My dear friends, I've had a very interesting life, and I'm delighted that I was able to make it this far because all of my life I have hated racism. My dear friends, recently neo-Nazis marched in Charlottesville, Virginia, giving the Nazi salute and carrying these flags in the United States of America. On January the 6th, our capital was invaded by people of the same ilk, people who have no respect for the laws of our country, and obviously they did not have respect for the ideals and laws of our Constitution. Why do we allow this to happen? My dear friends, that flag and that symbol of evil killed 60 million people. 60 million. These are the frightening symbols that are especially chilling for us World War II vets, who once again are being confronted by the symbols and the ideology that was used to terrorize them and their loved ones more than 70 years ago. We need to take their experiences and teach the act of love, kindness, and compassion to the American people. I quote Susan Wasinger, who said, "I would like to teach as many people as I can that we cannot be onlookers. If we see injustices taking place, we have to do something about this." My friends, it is the duty of elders, teachers, parents to educate Americans on how to confront racism and hatred in our country. And looking back in time, now is the key time to start. 60 million people died in World War II. 1,200 Catholic priests were killed. 6 million Jews went to the ovens. Gays, blacks, sick people. There were 20,000 concentration camps in Europe. 20,000. Please don't forget some of these numbers if you can. Having spoken to dozens of schools and probably 10 or 15,000 students, I questioned some students, where did the invasion of Normandy take place and how did it occur? Very few knew the correct response. This demonstrates to me that we are not adequately preparing our students to learn the lessons of history so they may help us build a better tomorrow. To teach 20th century history of the United States is a difficult task. I understand. However, teachers can make history come alive by using films, music, photographs, writings, and true stories of people like me. In doing so, not only do they teach the facts, but they generate a feeling, a human connection, a foundation of empathy that is so essential for the world we're living in today. The political chaos that we are currently witnessing can be eliminated by people who care and stand up for their neighbors. I must repeat one more time that we are God's families and we need to protect each other, love each other. We need to take care of each other. This is how we need to live in harmony. I'd like to remind you of a story of a favorite leader of a country in Europe of mine in Denmark. It was King Christian X of Denmark. While he was not a perfect leader, King Christian saved the lives of thousands of Jews by wearing the Star of David upon his clothes, as ordered by the SS German High Command. Because of his brave decision, only 77 Jews went to the ovens from Denmark. The rest were saved by everybody wearing the Jewish star. So what do we learn from this? One man made a difference in the world and in history. One man saved lives and prevented violence in this country. One man educated his people. One man did all of this. And after the fighting was over, I went to Denmark on furlough. Well, I have to tell you this because I'm proud of it. Where I soon fell in love with a beautiful lady named Bente Peterson. Her dad was a doctor in the hospital who treated me with kindness and respect. I need to expound further on the one-man theory that I have. Can one man make a difference, like your teacher, Mr. Trail? He is making a difference in your life right now. During the Battle of the Bulge, a large group of soldiers from the 422nd Infantry Division were captured by the Nazis. And they were taken to prisoner of war camps, one of which was Stalag 19. I was in that camp and saw it after they had been taken. Among the thousands of prisoners taken, there were 200 Jewish GIs. The master sergeant in charge of this large group of prisoners was a Sergeant Roddy Edmund. I will never forget him. I will always respect him. A Nazi officer asked this sergeant who the Jewish prisoners were and put a gun at his head. And if you don't answer me, I'm going to blow your head off. And Sergeant Edmund said, "We are all Jews," and thus they were not able to select and eliminate this group of GIs. This sergeant will forever be known for his bravery and concern for others. Again, one man changed the result of a racist act. My dear friends and girls especially, I have dedicated my life to telling the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust. I am also on the board of directors of the Holocaust Museum. I was chairman of the board of G-Star High School for Holocaust Studies. I use every opportunity that I have to tell the truth of what happened. I've talked to your school a number of times, and I'm delighted when Mr. Trail calls me. I use every opportunity to tell the truth of what happened and to share the stories of the survivors and the dangers of being indifferent. Countless times people have told me that a conversation with a World War II veteran made a real difference to them. And I hope I've done the same to you, for you. Now, every day is filled with choices. Sometimes it's hard to stand up to hatred, whether overt or subtle. However, we must do this. We do not have to go it alone. It is all of our responsibilities as teachers, parents, friends, politicians to do what's right. We must unite to combat this bullying, racism, and evil that has unabashedly resurfaced in the United States. 5 people died on January the 6th. For what reason? Because of hatred and racism. The war is now over, and June 2045, I was shipped to the 29th Infantry Division in Merlin, Germany. As a policeman for the civilians, as I was conversant in the language of German. My duty was to be in charge of 5 M8 tanks.
This one?
No.
Oh, the other picture. Hold on.
My daughter will get you a picture of what an M8 tank looks like. That's an M8 tank. An M8 tank is a tank that's on rubber tires so that it can travel through the city. And I was in charge of 5 of them. My duty was to be in charge of 5 of these tanks, which patrolled the city of Berlin. Berlin at this moment was not divided like it became later on into a Russian section, a French section, a British section, an American section. But it was all one section. And in my tank, there were 5 people. A driver who was an American, I who was the tank commander, a Russian, a Frenchman, and an Englishman. Now, there are a number of incidents which I find necessary to relate to you. I got a call on the radio that a Russian civilian was stealing the furniture out of a house in an area called Wannsee, which is the most astute area in all of Berlin. It's the most elaborate and expensive area in the city. And that's where the German High Command had built beautiful homes and were now gone. I was the car commander. My driver was an American. So we got a call on the radio to go to this house in Wannsee. And we proceeded to go to this house where a Russian civilian was stealing the furniture out of the house and loading it onto his truck. It was tables and chairs and things like that. I said to my Russian associate that was in my tank that he should tell his countryman to put the furniture back. I said to my driver, let's go to the Red Cross for coffee, because the head of the Red Cross lady was a friend of mine and I wanted to see her. So we turned around. The Russian said to his Russian friend, put the furniture back, and we left. Then I got a call on the radio. Arfa, what's wrong with you? They're taking the furniture again. So I said to my Russian, tell them to put the furniture back, and we will sit here until he puts it all back. So the Russian had a conversation with his Russian, bah, 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 bah. I didn't know what they were saying. They were obviously having a disagreement. And my Russian cocked a 50 caliber machine gun and killed that Russian over a chair. I went ballistics. I whipped out my pistol and I tried to shoot the Russian. I got him, but my driver pulled my arm down and the bullet went into his shoulder. I was so angry that he killed a human being over a chair and a table. My friends, to kill somebody over a chair or a table or a piece of furniture is the most aggravating event that has ever occurred in my life. But needless to say, I was in a lot of trouble. However, my captain hated the Russians and gave me a very light reprimand, and I was still in command of one tank. Another incident in Berlin when I was there, it was the 29th Division. In Berlin, there is a beautiful park, and I forgot the name, where there was a gigantic black market going on with the sale of American cigarettes, soap, nylon stockings. I was being bought by people of Russia and many countries in Europe who had been in war for 5 or 6 years. So we were ordered to arrest all of the black marketeers and confiscate their goods. Their goods were American goods that they had stolen from us, cigarettes and things of that nature. It so happened that a group of about 10 or 12 of these people had been residents of a Jewish concentration camp. One of them came up to me and explained the situation in which he had come from. I said, don't worry about it. You can take your merchandise and go. I said to the other constables, that's what we were called, that these people have suffered enough in this world, and I was letting them go. And if anybody didn't like it, then they would talk to me. But nobody said a word. And I was delighted to be able to do something nice for a group that was murdered, killed to the degree that these people had suffered. As a 96-year-old vet, I stand as a warning that we must ever be vigilant. Please help me teach this important period of history. Please help me tell my story and help share the stories that I tell and of others that tell to your associates, your family, your teachers, your father, your mother, your uncles, your aunts and brothers. I'm going to leave you now with a poem that I have had for 75 years, written by an unknown GI. The poem is titled Final Inspection. The soldier stood and faced God, which must always come to pass. He hoped his shoes were shining just as brightly as his brass. Step forward now, soldier, how shall I deal with you? Have you always turned the other cheek? And to our church have you been true? The soldier squared his shoulders and said, no, Lord, I guess I have not. Because those of us who carry guns can't always be a saint. I've had to work most Sundays. Sometimes my talk was tough. Sometimes I've been violent because the world is very rough. But I never took a penny that wasn't mine to keep, though I worked a lot of overtime when my bills got just too steep. And I never passed a cry for help, though at times I shook with fear. And God forgive me, I wept unmanly tears. I know I don't deserve a place among the people here. They never wanted me around except to calm their fears. If you have a place for me here, dear Lord, it needn't be so grand. I never expected or had too much. And if you don't, I'll understand. There was silence all around the throne where the saints had often trod. The soldier waited quietly for the judgment of his God. Step forward now, you soldier. You've borne your burdens well. Walk easily on heaven's streets. You've done your time in hell. It's been said we are free because of the brave. Thank you for allowing me to share my experience and the lessons I've learned on this subject, a subject very dear to me. God bless our military for granting us the freedom to enjoy life. God bless America for allowing us to live in freedom. And deepest thanks to you, Mr. Trail, and all the other teachers of my life. And God bless America, the country that we all live in. And God bless you, my darling children, and my girlfriends for life. I thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Carl. Are you ready for some questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let me sort of kick things off. As a World War II veteran, you're also a survivor of the Great Depression. Can you briefly describe what your family's experience was like during the Depression and where
Yes.
you were?
I have a very large memory of that depression. My dad escaped from the Russian Navy and came to America because this was the land of opportunity. And he jumped off his ship, swam to shore, went to Brooklyn, got a job, went to the Bronx, became a dishwasher, and walked 100 miles to my hometown, where a few years later he met my mother. It was now 1922. I was born in 1924. In 1929, a Great Depression came to America. My dad, who was self-taught in English, and my mom, who was self-taught in English. My mom went to work as a cook. My dad went to work as a house painter. And there was times when we had nothing in the house to eat in the 1930s, 1934, 35, I remember. But my mother always managed to make something so that we were able to survive. I went to a school as second grade. I must have been 7 or 8 years old. And my mother went to the hospital for a kidney operation, and it was done as a charitable case. And my dad had no place to leave me, so Miss Evans, my second grade school teacher, took me to her house, and I lived with them for about 3 to 6 months. I don't remember. And she was the love of my life as one of my teachers. Miss Bell took over after she did, and it went on and on and on to every teacher I ever had. Miss Galligan, well, on and on. The teachers were important to me. And because of the Depression, my dad opened a nightclub, and the gangsters of that era came in and shut the lights out and put my dad out of business. And again, we left without a bottle of milk. I worked as a bellhop at the Irvington Hotel, and I worked an entire summer, and I came home with $200. That's how bad times were in those days. But we survived it, and we were polite, and we were honest, and we tried to do the best we could. And all of my family were immigrants. My grandfather, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins. And we were able to survive by helping each other. The word is helping each other. My Uncle Lou gave my father $300 for my mother's operation. That put him out of business. But that's how we helped each other. That's the message I'm trying to portray today. You may not have anything, but you always have something. You have love, you have consideration, you have time. And you have time to be nice to each other and protect each other.
So where were you when you heard about the Pearl Harbor attack, and what was your immediate reaction?
I was in the movie theater with a girlfriend of mine who I later married. Again, a girlfriend. I really like girlfriends. And I was a Sunday afternoon movie, and Mr. Kutcher came out on the stage, interrupted the movie, and said, "Everybody go home. Pearl Harbor's being bombed. I think it's World War II starting over again." I took Doris Sherman back to her house, where her mother and father were listening to the radio. My mother and father lived 2 blocks away. I went to my house. My dad, my mother, and my sister were listening to a Philco radio. And we could hear the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And I said to my dad, "Dad, I'm 17 years old. I could join the Navy or the Marines. Would you let me go? You have to sign the paper." My dad said, "You can go when you finish high school," which was a year and a half later. And I finished high school and I left. I came home 3 years later. My dad was caught as being an illegal immigrant, but the mayor of my town went to Senator Ives and they passed a bill in Congress, the Carl Arfa bill, and they made him a citizen immediately. And I have to tell you one more story. My mother became a citizen and went to Judge Cook in my hometown. There's been a Judge Cook there for 150 years. Always father to son to son to father to son to son. And Judge Cook said to my mother was head of the Red Cross and they used to roll bandages in the school gym where they had long tables set up. I heard about this. I never saw it. And my mother was head of this group of women that rolled bandages for the GIs that were being wounded. And they would work there 8 hours a day, 10 days a week. And they put in a major effort, and they rolled millions of bandages. And my mother went to the court to become a citizen. And Judge Cook said to my mother, and I was there, Mrs. Arfa, the Lincoln Memorial is dedicated to which one of our presidents? Because he had to ask her a question. And she said, I think Mr. Lincoln. And everybody in the audience applauded and laughed and screamed and hollered. And he said, Mrs. Arfa, you are now a citizen of the United States. And it was the happiest day of my mother's life, the happiest day since she got married to my father. They had a love affair for 50 years.
So after Pearl Harbor was attacked and you were waiting to go into the military, how much did the war affect your life on a daily basis before you joined the Army?
It was a major issue. We would come home from school at 4 o'clock, turn on the radio, and try to listen to the news of who was losing what. At the beginning of the war, we were losing every day. We were losing men. We were killing our men. They were shooting down our planes. And I have to tell you that the Germans had the best armament of anybody. They had the best guns, the best planes, the best tanks. And they were winning the war until we got smart and we got into the war, which was a year and a half after the war started. We were supplying England with arms and ammunition before we got in the war, but it wasn't until the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor that we declared war, and President Roosevelt got up Sunday was the war, and Monday he got up in front of Congress and said, we are now at war. It was, the war occupied 90% of our effort and our time.
Do you remember war bonds and scrap drives and, signs all over the place and things like that?
Oh, I absolutely do. The war effort, everything was geared to the war effort. And we wanted to contribute to the war effort. My mother wouldn't throw out a tin can unless it went to the war effort. The United States was cooperative and tried everything they could to help the people that were fighting the war fight the war. I remember going to Fort McClellan, Alabama, and there was numerous organizations that wanted the effort to never discontinue. I remember one occasion where I cheated in a dance contest. We had a dance contest for the 69th Division, 15,000 men. And the girls came from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I remember this. It was a wonderful incident. I had been dancing with this girl. I forgot her name just now. And she and I had been practicing for months. Not practicing, dancing for months. When the bus arrived, the rule was that as the girls got off the bus, the soldier next in line had that girl. And you got a 3-day pass if you won the contest. So she hid on the bus until I was next in line. And she came down off the bus. I forgot her name. And we went up and danced, and we won first prize. I took my friend Irving Nisman to New Orleans, but we never got to New Orleans because we met two girls in Lake Pontchartrain, Louisiana, and we stayed there dancing and being kind to each other. And that's how our life was. We never did anything that was not nice. I don't know. I see people today hitting each other and carrying on. I hate it. I would like to have us live in peace and harmony.
So once you joined the Army and you went through boot camp and such, did you have a hard time adjusting to military life, or do you think you became a soldier easily?
No, I became a soldier easily. I was in boot camp 13 weeks, and I loved it. I wrote to my dad that I loved it. I wrote to my mom that I loved it. I have copies of those letters they saved. And I had a lieutenant, a Captain Barnes, Sergeant Barnes, who was my hero. He had just come home from Africa, where they had fought, and he was very highly trained, and he's the one that put me on the bazooka. I shall never forget him and all the effort that he put in my behalf.
How was the food in the Army when you got there?
The food?
Yep.
Well, they took a cow and they ground it up and they made hamburger. There were no steaks, but we had enough to eat, but boring food, mush in the morning, every morning, lunch every day. And I became a bugler. I forgot to tell you this. I would blow reveille and go back to bed. Then I would blow food and I'd go to the dining room. Except when we were out in the field. Then we were out in the field for 28 days at a time. And we ate what they gave us. K rations, C rations. We opened a can of C rations. I don't know what was in there. Nobody knew what was in there. It was a big secret. C rations were little tiny cans of mush. And K rations were packaged like popcorn. And D rations were candy bars.
So the food was a big difference for you from the Great Depression years?
Oh, yes. This is the life. Our children are leading a great life, and I'm happy for it. And I love it because they don't have to struggle, but some of them do. I saw 5,600 kids struggling yesterday on the border. My heart goes out to them because this is a monster country. And we could do something a little bit better for those kids. They're sleeping next to each other on mats on the floor. And my heart goes out to them because they are nothing but children. And they don't understand what's going on. I feel really sadness that we are allowing them in and putting them up like we're doing. Now, the president yesterday said they're going to do something better with the vice president, and I hope he's right. So I'm going to give him some time. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm happy to be in a wheelchair.
So when you crossed from America over to Britain on your troop ship, was there a worry about U-boats?
No. I have never been on a ship before. At this time, we were in the North Sea the propeller came out of the water. That's how rough it was. So I was eating 6 meals a day, 3 going down, 3 coming up. every day, 3 going down, 3 coming up, because it was just brutal. And then one day, a submarine shot down one of our freighters, but we were protected because we had 40, 50 ships surrounding us, and they couldn't have gotten to us. The troop ships were pretty well protected. And the freighters were on the outskirts. The PT boats and the destroyer escorts were surrounding us, and they had their job to do, and God bless them. One of my friends, Lenny Ettinger, was a Navy guy on board of my cruise ship that had a mounted gun, I think a 75 millimeter gun, that they were prepared to shoot at a submarine if they had to, but they never did.
What did you do for entertainment on the ship?
Entertainment,
Yep.
exercise. Everybody on board, and 200 push-ups, 100 liftings. That's what we did every day for an hour or 2 hours to maintain our viability. My Captain Datnoff was also the leader of this program, and he would take 200 men that were his company and crowd them with 200 push-ups, and he'd step on my head and say, "Push up." But that was the love that I had for him, because he protected me. He cared about us. He worried about us. He provided us with ammunition, guns, and food. And his daughter still calls me once a month. And he came and lived with me for 3 days. Stayed with me for 3 days, not lived, stayed with me. After the war, he became a colonel, full colonel.
When you got to England, was it vastly different from America?
Yes, vastly different. The English people didn't have the things that we had in America. The English people were dependent upon the Americans providing them with various weapons, guns, food, ammunition. The only thing they didn't provide them with was the best 3.2 beer, which is beer with only 3.2% alcohol, and you could drink 8 gallons of it and never get drunk. But that was the way it was, and they didn't have the alcohol to put in the beer. But I liked it because I was dating Molly, and I'll always love her. Oh, I have to tell you a story. My wife and I went to visit Molly about, I guess, 20 years ago. And I walked into the pub, and there was a young man serving beer and whiskey. And I said to him, "Excuse me, young man, I'm looking for a Molly Sweeney." And he said to me, "You're Carl Arfa, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, that's me mum, M-U-M, me mum. And she's in the Canary Islands on vacation with my dad. And she's going to be upset that she missed you, because she loves you till today. And I love her till today."
When you were about to get on the LST, the night before you were due to go over to France and start your combat experience, was it kind of a scary, what am I getting into kind of thought process?
No, it was not scary at all. It was something we wanted to do. They issued us live ammunition. I wore a pistol and carried a bazooka, and we were given live ammunition the night before. And we went on board the LSTs, carrying live ammunition and anxious to get going. We wanted to get it started. I remember distinctly everybody saying, let's get to the front. And when we got near the front, we heard the big guns going off, the 88s and the 90s. But we were lucky in that we went to a town called Eupen, Belgium, where the main fighting was being done in a town called where the commanding general was ordered the commanding officer of the American forces to give up and surrender.
Bastonia.
Bastogne. And the American commanding officer said to the radio operator, tell him nuts. So when he radioed back Nisa, which is the German word for nuts, the German officer said, what does that mean? He said, nuts. And nobody knew what it meant, but we didn't give it up. And then General Patton came up from the south and sort of saved us with his Third Army. And that was the end of the Battle of the Bulge, the largest battle of any war of any time.
I asked you this yesterday with a different group, so this group didn't hear the answer, but one of the things the Battle of the Bulge is known for was how cold it was and what you had to endure. How cold did it get for you?
Well, it hung around the 20-degree number. I was lucky. I found a dead tanker, and I stole his coat. I didn't steal it. I took his coat because we didn't have the proper wear to survive that cold weather, but we had to do what we had to do. He didn't need the coat. He was dead, and I needed it, so I took it off and put it on. Rain and sleet and snow and ice and living in a foxhole without any heat, without any warm clothes. But we were able to fire it down the valley into the German side. And it was the most horrible of experiences that we had during the entire war because of the weather. The Germans were winning until Patton came up. And it was an experience that turned us from kids into men. And we became men in 15 minutes when the Germans attacked. But we fought them off. I don't want to tell you I was any kind of a hero. I wasn't.
But one of the things that you have been called a hero for is being involved in the liberation of the concentration camp. And when you got there, what was the reaction of the people who were held there to you?
Oh my God. Number one, the most important reaction was that finally, after 6 million people died, Jews, that somebody came to rescue them. And they didn't know how to communicate with us because nobody spoke the language except me. And how do you communicate with somebody saying, thank you for coming to save me. Thank you for coming to rescue me. Thank you for coming to save my children, my life, my mother, my father. How do you say that to people? When you can't communicate. But I was able to communicate. So I could speak 2 languages, Yiddish and German. And I spoke Yiddish fluently and German somewhat adequately in German. So the rescue was done by Captain Dadnoff, who came with the blankets and the food and the cooks and the chefs and the pots and pans. I don't know what he had because I left. But I heard from numerous people of that particular camp. They worked at Nordhausen, 40 miles of underground road, 40 miles of underground road, where they built airplanes and tanks and guns. And it was done by 18,000 prisoners, Jewish prisoners that died in this underground cavern. Underground 40 miles. So that you couldn't see it from the air, that the Air Force couldn't bomb it.
How long were you at the camp?
Well, I was there a couple of hours only.
Was it hard to get out of your mind afterwards?
It never got out of my mind. It hasn't been out of my mind. Any time I've been any place, I always come back to that issue. I don't know how one person could do this to another. How can one person starve another to death? How can one person work another to death? How can one person say to one, either you work or I'll shoot you? It's a very difficult emotion to overcome. I've never overcome it. And every holiday I think about it more intensely. And they were denied their own holidays. They were denied food. They were denied liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. I will never forget it. And I had a major fight in Merlin when I said to another car commander, those people are going. And he said to me, no, they're not. We're confiscating their goods. I said, you put one hand on any of them, I'll blow your head off. And I whipped out my pistol and I meant it. And he knew that I meant it because the emotion was so strong. And I'm emotional today about it. I would not think twice if I had to do that again, if I would do it. But that's because I love my life, I love my children, I love my wife. And I especially love the girls that I see in your class, Mr. Trey. They're a bunch of beauties, I'm telling you.
One of them just said thank you.
Well, does she want to have a date?
Well, she did say earlier she was willing to go to the dance. So,
okay, I did the jitterbug. I was the best jitterbugger in town.
I mean, I don't want to dwell on this issue, but I've never asked the question. When you went to the camp, was this one of the kinds of camps where there were bodies all over the place? And
no, this was a work camp.
Just a work camp.
Yeah, there were no bodies. They were just weak, sick people. But they all stood in the courtyard behind the barbed wire when I said to them in German, stay where you are, don't move. And I pointed my machine gun at them. And then later I found out who they, not later, minutes later, I found out who they were. And I became involved with them, with my captain.
I've heard other people who've liberated camps say when they got to the camp, they really understood what the war was about. Can you agree with that?
Absolutely. But let me tell you, Mr. Trail, how could 60 million people die in 4 years? Except one man, Adolf Hitler, decided that that was what it was going to happen. And 60 million people died. Not Germans, but others. Some Germans died also, but that was not in the count.
Where were you when the war came to an end, and what was the party like?
Oh, my God. It was April of 45. I forgot which date. I was on the front lines in Torgau, Germany. And the war was now almost all over. And the Russians had come from the east. And that night we saw the flares showing up, red and green flares. I radioed my captain. I said, "Sir, I'm watching green flares." He said, "Just stay where you are and we'll see what's happening tomorrow." And the next day, a Russian rowboat came across, and I knew they were Russians, and I started talking to them. And I was a happy guy because my family were Russians, although my father hated them with a passion. And but these were different people, and but within a day or two or three, I don't remember now, the war was now officially over, and they were signing some kind of an agreement. But I was a lowly person in this war. I had no authority other than over about 18, 20 guys.
So between the Russians and yourself, was there a party that the war was over?
It was more than a party. It was a drunken fears. The Russians brought vodka, and we were drinking it out of the bottle. And it was a fun time.
As I recall, you met a Russian woman soldier?
Yes, I did, and I kissed her. Or she kissed me, I should say. There were three of them, four of them. They were really soldiers of the war. And they were frontline soldiers. And Tavarish was the big word. And this Russian lady came over and kissed me right on the lips and said, "Tavarish Amerikansky." And I said, "Ruski." And we hugged. It was over. The war was over.
So you were doing your part for international relations.
Oh, yeah. I loved international relations, especially with pretty ladies. And I hadn't seen a lady on the front lines in, I don't know, months. And here were three ladies on the front lines.
So just to ask one more question on my end, I'll let students who may have a question answer a couple. What was it like coming home for you?
That was after 3 years, or almost 3 years, the anxiety of seeing my mother, my father, and my family was the most incredible emotion I've ever had in my life. And as the ship got nearer to the United States, it was a 10-day journey, or 8-day journey, I don't remember exactly. We were on a troop carrier that held 1,200 people. And we started leaning over the rail, I think, on the third day out, looking for a glimpse of America. You guys got to understand what America is. You guys need to understand what the glory of this country is. And you need to preach it. You need to preach it, guys. This is a country that is born on liberty and life and the pursuit of happiness. And just waiting to see the shore was a moment of delight.
So I'm going to quickly take this so we can see more people here. If somebody has a question they would like to ask, because we don't get to ask World War II veterans questions every day, I'll be more than happy to let you ask a question, because if you don't, I have one, as you're probably not surprised by. Anybody have anything they would like to ask?
How about you? You want a date?
Yeah.
You're smiling. That's a question.
Well, Maya's still waiting. She's the one who wants to go to the dance, so I'll have to get you two connected privately.
Okay.
All right, since nobody else is asking a question, I'm going to ask a question based on our conversation last night. You were at Woodstock.
Yes,
what was that like?
Woodstock was the most wonderful experience. of happiness that I have ever seen. 500,000 kids showed up in my town. My son and my daughter and my son-in-law and my grandsons were all there in three of my trucks. And Maxie Yazger, who owned the farm where the Woodstock took place, was my best friend. His wife was an ex-girlfriend of mine. I went to school with him and her. And I had two children that were there. And I got a call from Maxie Yazger himself saying, Carl, bring Dr. Kornblum. We're having a baby here. One of the participants is giving birth. The road was blocked, so we couldn't get a car through. So I brought him on my motorcycle. And we wove in and around the cars until we got to Maxie's house, where the young lady was in the living room with everybody in attendance and everybody trying to be of help. And Dr. Kornblum delivered a little girl, and they named it after Sylvia, the lady who owned the house. And it was a happy moment for everybody, especially me, because I brought the doctor. And Woodstock, Maxie said to the farmers surrounding Woodstock in Bethel, New York, which is 7 miles from where I was born and raised, let these kids go in the fields. It was a farm country, and let them have the turnips and the beets and the plums and the cherries and whatever you got, and I'll pay you for them, for whatever you lose. So they went into the fields and took out the potatoes and the tomatoes and the onions, and they ate them, and everybody was good. Now, how could 500,000 kids not have one fight? Lou Ratner was the sheriff, my dad was the commissioner of police, and I became a big shot with Lou Ratner. And I stood there next to him, and he said to me, I've given orders to all of my deputies not to touch anybody, not to arrest anybody, not to start with anybody. And these kids are going to have a free reign for the next week. And they did. The party started out at 50,000, at 35,000. That's what was supposed to come. And they opened up the gates and they let everybody come, and it was 500,000 kids.
Now, you said you stayed for some of the musical acts. Do you remember anybody you saw?
Oh, yeah. I saw at least 6 acts or 10 acts, 8 acts. I don't know. I don't even remember their names anymore. That they're famous people. And I don't remember a lot of names anymore. I'm losing my memory. But like I didn't remember Mr. Fields. David, what happened? Oh,
The Wi-Fi went out briefly. We're okay now.
Anyhow, I want everybody to see my haircut. You like my hairdo? No.
It looks like it doesn't take a lot of maintenance.
It takes very little maintenance. A bar of soap. That's it.
Well, our bell is going to ring here. I wish we had more time, Carl. You're always a treasure, and I appreciate so much your wife and your daughter sharing you with us. Undoubtedly, we will talk again, but as always, I'm so thankful for you and your friendship.
And I'm thankful for you and your friendship.
I wish
school, my favorite school of all times.
Ooh,
I've been to your school and have girlfriends and boyfriends and friends. In that school, I got a new girlfriend tonight. I don't know which one it is, but it's at least 5 of them.
She's off camera right now, but she's ready.
Okay. Have a good one, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. My daughter's coming back to the camera.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, Debbie.
The trail.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week. Enjoy your long weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, all.